I'm to those of you with whom I've not had the pleasure to associate or to meet. It's a pleasure to meet you and to see you and welcome you to the Elpis group. You'll see that it's quite a congenial group of scholars and academics who have a lot of fun together with great association and who legitimately explore under the banner of Elpis our legal studies, our research, and uh, our academic and life beyond that even. Offering this modest discussion today, excuse me, it's a work in progress about things that are not pleasant at all. Uh, uh, and that has to do obviously with war crimes. Uh, I'll ask you for your contribution. Some of the conclusions and some of my reasoning today are very susceptible to debate. And please join in and be welcome. I hope to publish some of this when I finally finish, hopefully in the care of Demetrios and the colleagues at Elpis, and the finished product is ready. Anyway, there's one other teaching assistant, Chloe McGregor, who is in court at the moment, and so she couldn't be here, but she too was very helpful. The topic that I've chosen is curiously named Ethnic Cleansing, Legalism, Redundancy, and Reality. It comes from many conversations that a lot of us have had about overlapping of war crimes, about the heavy baggage of certain of the titles of the war crimes, and like I said, whether it matters or not, depending on your level of engagement with some of these awful events that have been taking place in our time. As in many legal matters, categories and accusations may not be as they seem on the surface. And that's certainly the case here. Some people don't care what you call something, other people care a lot. Camus wrote that calling things by the wrong name adds to the affliction of the world. We lawyers would take it a whole different level. To mislabel something, it can mean a lawsuit, the lack of a contract, culpability or not. As lawyers and legal scientists, it matters how things are called. And that's why I'm exploring this legalism, redundancy, and reality. And I appreciate your reflections on it. The world, unfortunately, is a dark place right now. Our media are filled with violence and conflict across the globe, as we all know, sadly. There's tremendous angst in the United States, and I know worldwide, about the problems, the ongoing pain and suffering going on in the Middle East. And some question the ability of international law to cope with these stresses, fearing that a wider armed conflict is surely coming. Others suggest that it is left to the fortitude and ingenuity of world leaders and their advisors to shape and fortify global relations and the global legal order to meet today's demands of humanity and justice. Well, that's a lot. The previous century gave us the most widespread violence in history, and then halfway through the century, global leaders came together and created our current life-saving doctrines and institutions, from the UN and on to our modern treaties and conventions that have stitched together some level of order, some impulses pushing us all on a path forward, while pushing away some of these, or trying to push away some of the conflicts in the world. I would advocate with the others that it's time for us to do more institution building, for us to be innovative thinking in international doctrine and conflict avoidance. Our colleague, Professor Bosco da Silva, has notably suggested, as many of us have heard, novel ways of ordering supranational and intergovernmental regional structures, for instance, in Europe, to better meet the complex needs of our times. I would suggest that we need this kind of thinking worldwide in various ways. So today, we're certainly faced with crises. I think most of us would be shocked. From China to Europe, the Middle East to Asia. We all know, and this is a central point here, international law evolves and it accretes as time and events flow past us. As we know, international law evolves as we accept and reject norms, okay, and practices as we react to events. So the many powerful forces at work around the globe today need to be recognized, examined, rejected, promoted, and otherwise responded to. When we pull up the PowerPoint, I hate to give people death by PowerPoint, so I'm trying to stay away from it a little bit. The teaching assistants and research assistants have prepared a lovely PowerPoint, which of course we'll share with you. But there's a website on it that will track for you every active conflict in the world today. And it's horrifying to know how many places in Africa are actually under siege, under attack. People, masses of people, conflicting militias and governments. It's surprising also as we stretch to Asia and all over the world. So it's a sad realization. Today, I want to focus narrowly on ethnic cleansing and compare it practically with the other classic war crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and aggression. And I want to do this in two specific areas. One that I've been working with in particular as it regards colleagues in Germany and the International Committee of the Red Cross, and that is, of course, Ukraine. I suspect Friedrich is occupied today. Pleasure of collaborating with him and Demetrius and others in this area. So I want to apply the analytical grid to Ukraine, and let's see what's really going on there. And for the purpose of our taxonomy or whatever, we will look at those crimes and see what's really out there and which of them are real, which of them are redundant, which of them are just inflammatory, and I hope it's of some value. I appreciate your view on that. Okay. I've written that there's a lot of thematic conflict in which questions of definition or taxonomy, that's a really expensive word there. And of course, it just means how we order things. But they're not just academic high talk. They can be important in results, especially as those of you know who are working in specific war crimes having to do with Ukraine since the February 24th invasion of 2022. And then many of you likely, do any of you know about the conflict that has been going on in Nagorno-Karabakh? Demetrius does. Anybody else? Oh, Bosco, of course, does. And I'm sure others of you probably have heard of it under a different name or a different categorization. All right. But these two conflicts give us, I mean, these are, speaking of these phrases that are lofty, but these are inscrutable conflicts. They bring it all together. They're continental conflicts because they both occur just as Asia merges with Eastern Europe, very far Western Asia, Eastern Europe. As we all know, maybe Europe, but we divide them for many reasons, through the Caucasus and up through Russia. But These are classic because they involve religion, of course. In Ukraine, it's just which brand of Christianity you want. But in Nagorno-Karabakh, of course, it's the conflict of centuries of Islam and Turkish influences. And the other side of Nagorno-Karabakh, there's Armenia, centuries and centuries of Orthodox Christianity. Also, it's not just religion, it's ethnicity. It's also the geographical crossroads. And what else did we add to this conflict? Oh, let's just throw in oil, energy resources, which are fueling the purses of many countries involved in these conflicts. We understand the value of energy to Russia, and the same can be said, as we say euphemistically, of Baku, less of the capital of Azerbaijan, which is the player with Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh dispute. I just do this to focus the microscope to give us a backdrop on which to analyze these war crimes. So I invite you to the conversation also because these crimes involve norms in international law that are not optional. We're talking about the jus cogens, or the omnes principles, from which theoretically no one can hide. We all know what's going on behind the theoretical part of that. But as international law applies, no one can avoid slavery, genocide, piracy, aggression, these kinds of crimes. So I hope to apply the grid to these two as we analyze the facts on the ground and where we place them in our ICC prosecutions or in whatever form of special tribunal, or however we seek to accuse, convict, seek accountability, we choose. The first is ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing may be the easiest. No, it's not. But it's not defined in our typical sources, really. It's become a dominant term in the media and in a lot of our scholarship because so many countries want to avoid the G word. They want to stay away from genocide, so they fall back on ethnic cleansing. Some people say it's invaded the legal lexicon, from statements at the UN to reports certainly in the media, and even some judgments in the International Court of Justice. I won't call on people because I'm a teacher, right? But I don't dare do that at this time of day. I think, Bart, is it after dinner at your house? Is it after 7 o'clock?
It's around dinner here at Hanover, at least.
I'm not one to ask people to help me. I'm sorry it's so late, but
no matter.
Anyway, I'm just happy to see everyone. I can't wait to see you again in person. Anyway, ethnic cleansing, what is it? It sometimes means forced deportation, transfer of population. It's not a term in the Rome Statute of the ICC, which is where we go these days to define most of these, or all of the war crimes except ethnic cleansing. It's a purposeful policy designed by one ethnic group or religious group to remove by violent or terror-inspiring means the civilian population of another group. Okay? It can be murder, torture, or whatever, or it can be intimidation. And I'm throwing away pages here because we don't have time or need to be repetitive. Maybe the best definition of ethnic cleansing is rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force or intimidation to remove from a given area persons of another ethnic or religious group. And of course, it's contrary to international law. we're going to look at Russia and what they're doing in Ukraine and see if this is ethnic cleansing. And we'll look at Nagorno-Karabakh. I wanted to take the chance to recommend to you. Christmas is coming and there's good reading time. The Internationalist is a book by two Yale scholars, Una Hathaway and Scott Shapiro. It's a wonderful book about the original Kellogg Beyond Pact and the international cooperation following World War I, or at World War I and World War II, where we changed the whole landscape of international law, leading to the UN Charter. The other book I would recommend is Black Garden by Thomas Loyola, which is a very excellent history of the Nagorno-Karabakh. The more I read, the more I suffer with these people and enjoy their culture and all of that. Anyway, our second crime is genocide. Okay, the United States has recognized 8 genocides: Bosnia, Rwanda, Darfur, 2 areas under ISIS control, the Uyghurs, the Armenian genocide, and the Rohingya genocide, and one in Burma and Myanmar. Different states you'll find recognize different genocides. I was watching that Germany recognizes different genocides, and Portugal, for example, and Germany has taken a lead in trying to seek some kind of accommodation with some of its colonial past, which is, I think, heroic in many ways. But the word genocide was coined by a Polish lawyer, Raphael Lemkin, in his book, which line for you. Greek genus, Latin side, meaning obviously killing. It was coined in response to the Holocaust, and first mentioned as a crime under international law by a United Nations General Assembly resolution in 1946, followed, of course, by the famous 1948 Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. I keep looking to the side because that's where your faces are. I should move them. I can do that. All right. So genocide is set out in the convention, has been widely adopted. It's repeated in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court verbatim, and its language is more significant than one might think at first, because its language raises some very high thresholds and are frustrating for people who wish to use this term. Obviously, genocide has become a part of our customary international law. The prohibition of genocide is a peremptory norm, and it applies to everyone, no matter what they're doing. This was the first human rights treaty adopted by the General Assembly, and it was a crucial step in the development of international human rights and international criminal law as we know it today. So we ask, why are states so reluctant to recognize genocide? I think the Armenians sought for forever to have the genocide recognized by countries and their official proclamations and resolutions. And in the United States, there's quite a battle. The Turkish influences didn't want the terrible title of genocide placed on them. History can be ambiguous, but history seems to favor the Armenians at this point. People oppose the Armenian genocide, nations oppose the title of genocide for other reasons other than just this notorious nature of it. If you're a signatory to the Genocide Convention, you also have an obligation to prevent genocide. I don't know if you saw it, the morning paper right? It might have been yesterday's paper. I'm turning to my experts and the Center for Constitutional Reform in the United States has sued President Biden over the last few days for his refusal to prevent or punish or otherwise oppose the genocide allegedly in the Middle East. The Genocide Convention says you must, in Article 1, you must prevent it, you must punish it, and this has been interpreted by the International Court of Justice. You should ensure that effective penalties are provided. You should try persons and you should grant extradition to persons. Wow, really? If this is upheld and if this is really to happen, that's going to be quite a daunting task for many countries to come to grips with whether something is genocide or not. The popular understanding of genocide, of course, is to remove people out. And you have your own country without these other people. Possibly some people in the United States are faced with the reality of such a vast population. It's surely a blessing. And the future holds for all of us. I'm not sure how diverse they're all going to be, but I think it's a good thing. Okay. Genocide, right? Moving the people out. The Rome Statute says that there are two elements. There's the mental element that you must intend to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. I'm going to come back because that as such is poisonous. Secondly, the physical part tends to be easier. If you start killing people, as we've seen in so many of these genocides in Africa, just mass death, causing serious bodily and mental harm, and Bosnia, deliberately inflicting group conditions in a way calculated to bring about physical destruction, stopping births, transferring children. Let's come up with the ICC and with Russia moving Ukrainian children out of Ukraine. And the physical acts are the easier part to prove. The third part, as we will see when we get to the application, is the intent. Okay. The next crime is under Article 7 of the Rome Statute, crimes against humanity. Do we have the Rome? We put the Rome Statute up. Isn't this nice, Osco, to have so many people to help?
I'm jealous.
Do we have the Rome Statute here? Excuse me. Oh, guys, see, the beauty of this is that I have these helpers, I shouldn't say helpers, these scholars, and I have not taken advantage of them. I think we have pictures of Ukraine and also you see Russia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and the Nagorno-Karabakh in the middle. We have Russia and Ukraine. Yes, here they are, various pictures. We'll make this available to you. I should have been more faithful to the guidance I have been given. If we can go now to, okay. Of course, you know these. Article 7, maybe? I'm trying to talk too quickly. And Article 7 of the Rome Statutes lists the many awful crimes against humanity: murder, extermination, enslavement, imprisonment, torture, sex crimes, and other similar crimes. Okay, it includes things outside the disappearance of persons and other inhumane acts causing serious bodily injury, mental or physical harm to mental or physical health. In contrast with genocide, when people kill In contrast to genocide, crimes against humanity do not need to target a specific group. Instead, the victim of the attack can be a civilian population, regardless of its affiliation or identity. So, just blowing up people, right? Another important distinction is that in the case of crimes against humanity, it's not necessary to prove an overall specific intent. It suffices that there be a simple intent to commit murder, extermination, mutilation, or any of those things. So the perpetrator must act with the knowledge of the attack against the civilian population, and that his or her action is a part of that attack. Okay. Okay. War crimes. We get Article 8 of the statute. Any of the following acts committed that violate the Geneva Convention. We all know what the 1949 Geneva Conventions were about. They were about protecting civilians in various and non-combatants in various ways, whether they were injured soldiers, whether they were prisoners of war, whether they were medical workers. Convention 1, Convention 2, Convention 3, Convention 4. We're particularly interested in the non-combatants in Convention 4, and they all qualify under a common, all four of the conventions have a common Article 3 that simply says you cannot do bad things, inhumane things to civilians or any of these non-combatants. So it's all right. Article 8 has another part. Article 8 has an Article 8 this. This comes from my dictionaries telling me it comes from the French. I suspect that having things from farther back than that, but it just means twice. And Article 8 this was passed later because when they promulgated and agreed the original Rome Statute, countries weren't ready to go here. The 8 this, and that's the crime of aggression. The crime of aggression, for reasons you understand is controversial, goes after the leaders. The political and military leaders feel responsible for international aggression. Okay, I have written, and many others have written, that this was written perfectly for leaders such as Putin, who orchestrated with his top leaders who clearly invasion of Ukraine, like the original excuses held up for long was clearly a crime of aggression. Unfortunately, 8 this was only agreed by the group with certain provisions that countries that didn't sign on to 8 this didn't apply to. So the only way to get world leaders from those countries is to find them outside of the country. So those are our categories. How are we doing? My ambition, Bosco, is to get people out of here within about a 15-minute. Is that okay? Obviously, as people have to go, but I think there's some surprises. I hope there are some surprises here for you. Otherwise, I may have wasted your time.
You have all the time of the world. Don't worry.
Thank you, Bosco. You're a great colleague. Okay, let's ask the question. And we'll go off script here. In Russia, do we have ethnic cleansing? Do we have a group of people that are trying by force or intimidation to move out of the area? Ethnic cleansing in Russia. Dimitrios, help me. Are you there?
I'm here.
You think we have ethnic cleansing? Have we tried to move people out?
Sorry, I didn't get you acoustically
This
properly.
is not fair.
I think,
We've all been on these and we've been reading something and
you know, as a Greek, I've had my share of ethnic cleansing also. So
Well, I think in many regards, we don't have ethnic cleansing. In Russia, speak to me if you, Ravana, Carolina, I can only see your faces. I can't see anybody else's faces. But only if you wish. There is ethnic cleansing only in the sense of moving those children. And that may be a legitimate claim that ethnic cleansing. But I'm open to your view on it. Many people have, one law dean in a very far eastern European Union country has argued with me at length that there's surely ethnic cleansing in Ukraine because they bombed the globe mercilessly, killed so many people, obviously committed crimes against humanity in wartime. We've seen the pictures of mutilations. I don't know about the sexual things. Just the okay, good. We've seen all of these things. We know that when we get to crimes against humanity and war crimes, we're going to get there. But is it genocide? Blowing the country up from Kyiv to anywhere, to Geneva, to the river. And one writer said, this is not genocide, and this was persuasive to me. This is not genocide because this is the way the Russians acted in Afghanistan. This is the way the Russians act everything. It's scorched earth. They're not trying to remove an ethnic group from anywhere. They're just trying to kill people to take over the country. And think about it. I'd love to hear from you and like to get the views on it. When we look at crimes against humanity, when we look at all of these things, you're going to put that up there, crimes against humanity? Clearly, there are numerous crimes against humanity, and it's you name it, we've got it. With Russia and okay, yeah, killing members, seriously bodily injury, mental harm, conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction. So anyway, and war crimes is, there's so much violence to civilians, and I think this is a bigger case of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Anybody want to comment? Sorry, I'm not too good at driving and assuming they died. Thank goodness, now we've got. And at this point, Roscoe, I must introduce my court-bound research assistant, Chloe McGregor, has made it. And so she is here. Chloe, would you come and say hi and tell them where you're from?
Hi, I'm from Utah.
Oh, you got it.
I have to, I got it. Hi.
Okay, Chloe's from Utah and she's wonderful. So we've introduced everybody. The gang's all here, as we say. Now, what about Nagorno-Karabakh? Are you familiar with what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh? And you might not be. Do you have the slide of Nagorno-Karabakh? Nagorno-Karabakh was part of the Soviet Socialist Republic in Azerbaijan and in Armenia under the Soviets until 1988-89, right? And that's when the trouble started. It kind of reminds me of the Balkans a bit. Once the strong rule, central rule from Moscow diminished, these countries weren't sure which way to go. So this area has been recognized as Armenian. I'm going to get another map here for you. Can we go to the next one? Is this visible to them? Okay, great. Okay, so you can see, Armenia and Azerbaijan, just depending on your map, just inside of far left of Asia. Some people actually put the line of Loyola and call this very Eastern Europe. Nonetheless, these were Soviet Socialist republics, and after the collapse of the Soviet rule, they became independent. And in the middle of them was the Oblast of Nagorno-Karabakh. Where is it? There it is. In the middle of it, you see in the blue, was the Oblast, an enclave that was self-autonomous Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh. They called it Artsakh. Okay? And anyway, 1989, 1990 is when the struggle really started. The ethnic Armenians in that area have been ethnic Armenians for centuries. It is a mountainous enclave protected in a way by its own mountains. And they lobbied from the beginning, seeking to be a part of Armenia and then to be their own country, Armenian based, right? Armenian ethnicity. And this unfortunately in right after, trying to be exactly right, from 1988 to 94 was a war in which the Armenians heavily supported in Nagorno-Karabakh, and they sort of were pushing off the Azeris, and they were an independent, kind of an independent country, an autonomous enclave. And there were many efforts to reunite formally with Armenia, and they did not succeed. So in the first Nagorno War, the Armenians, supported by the Russians, Orthodox Christian, and Russia was very supportive. So they were happy, and they were, by the peace settlement, they guaranteed access through what's called the Latin corridor at the bottom of Nagorno-Karabakh into Armenia. This is a direct highway, a direct link to keep open their supplies, their influence, their people, and their umbilical part to Armenia. Well, it seems that the peace was broken in 2020, and this time, 2021, this time the Soviets were busy with their war in Ukraine, and they were irritated at the Armenians because they were from Western inclination, and so the Russians backed away. And in the meantime, in Azerbaijan, its ties with the West have greatly increased, especially with Turkey, of course, and also with oil, energy, Exxon, Texaco, and all over the place. And its ties to the European Union have developed. And when the Second War took place, we had really, we fought to a standoff, but Nagorno-Karabakh's area control was greatly reduced to its core, and things got really tense, although there was a truce. Finally, in September of last year, I think it was about 10 months ago, Azerbaijan cut the umbilical cord, if you can see, cut the umbilical cord into Armenia. It's really complicated because the Armenians were not able to get supplies into Nagorno-Karabakh, and the Nagorno-Karabakh people began to see shortages, and they accused the Azerbaijanis of strangling them and cutting them off. The Azerbaijanis, on the other hand, offered to supply Nagorno-Karabakh through a northern route to Azerbaijan and a new highway. The government in Nagorno-Karabakh said, we don't want your food, we want our connection to Armenia. And so it was a tense standoff in the youth center. Peacekeepers, some observers to witness what was going on, France did, and quite a tense situation. Finally, in September this year, from one day, I think it was September 11th, the Azerbaijanis staged a major attack and the game was over. Just shut down. And the corridor was closed and attacked. And the government, the fugitive government, the actual government in power in Nagorno-Karabakh collapsed. They decided the legislature dissolved and it said that the country was the autonomous region and ceased to exist at the end of the year. And now Azerbaijan has complete control, total control of thousands of troops on the ground there. As a consequence, over 100,000 people in Nagorno-Karabakh have fled. They opened the corridor and the people are left. And because they're not at home, Nagorno-Karabakh has been the home centuries, and they are Armenian. They are Armenian in language and religion, but not in culture and in other ways. And because they're claiming that they have been ethnically cleansed. They were not forced out at gunpoint. They were forced out, they say, by intimidation. This is a matter of, it's going to be, it is a matter of evidence. It's a matter of great concern to people who care about equity and fairness. I will go now to, there is another threat here, and that is that the Azerbaijanis are now talking about opening the Zangezur corridor, which is the blue road that you see from Horadiz all the way up into Kars, Turkey. Once you see what they're trying to do, they're opening a direct, almost direct route from Turkey to Baku, which really unites Turkish and Islamic people. So the Armenians are saying, no, you can't take our land at the bottom, and the Azerbaijanis are saying, well, former agreement that promised us this. And so people are quite on the Azerbaijan, which is quite in a powerful position right now, what they're going to do. So as I look at the clock, forgive me, my colleagues, I'm sure I've left out the fact that everyone, old to young, schools have closed in the corner about everyone has left except for, I saw one United Nations estimate, but I didn't believe it. So maybe 100 people stayed by it. Nonetheless, over 100,000 people have fled. The first question we asked under our matrix on war crimes is crimes, have they been ethnically cleansed? What would one say? Yes, the soldiers went in. The soldiers had gone in. The bombs did explode. It took 24 hours to end this conflict with overpowering force and to frighten the people of Azerbaijan of Nagorno-Karabakh out. But the Azerbaijanis at the UN will tell you, we didn't force anybody. We offered everybody protection, schools, independence. All they have to do is put away their guns and promise to be faithful, law-abiding citizens of Azerbaijan. And why did the people leave? That ethnic cleansing. I want to read one thing to you that it was written in a letter to the Guardian when Azerbaijani women who said this, and this persuaded me that this is indeed ethnic cleansing by intimidation. The world has just seen an end to centuries of Armenian resistance in Nagorno-Karabakh. All ethnic Armenians have left, traveling in caravan cars to the border of Armenia. And she says, the Armenian children now displaced will hate the Azerbaijanis. just as I once hated the Armenians for what they did to me. I was a victim of the first war, when Armenia was victorious, and it definitely cringed to all the Azerbaijanis. She said she was speaking then out, hoping to be a small pebble lodged in the endless cycle of violence. In school, I learned that the Armenians were villains responsible for all of our tragedies. You understand what she's saying. The Azerbaijanis and the Armenians were centuries of redundancy and think of Alsace, teaching our children to hate the others for centuries on and off. She concludes that of course the people had no choice, and that no matter what the government in Baku says, the people in the Democratic are going to feel no consolation, and they're going to be intimidated that their way of life is going to be. I have reached a conclusion, and I would appreciate your opinions on the state of the accusation, the finding of ethnic cleansing, and I think the intimidation is sufficient to meet that standard. Genocide, we go to the next time as we look at the we'll see the destruction, see the movement of the people, but I don't see the destruction of the people. Again, we are rolling here in a discussion, and I hope you'll send me your thoughts and your comments as I continue to see this. Likewise, there may be crimes against humanity, war crimes I do not see. We're not seeing physical violence, and well, I'm not really certain. So my conclusion, the exercise I've attempted to lead us through today, is that as we have sought to define the war terms existing in our lexicon today, we see some surprises in Russia, terrible atrocities, but qualifying maybe differently than most people would think, with the technically and legal definitions of our crimes. And also in the Nagorno-Karabakh, crimes of a very different nature, and yet my conclusion is that this 100,000 people have been terribly affronted and have been the victims of ethnic cleansing. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has, or to I'd be happy to take any comments or any emails. I'm reaching you from Loyola University in New Orleans, Louisiana. So the email is just Hugg, or you can comment, I think, in the chat. And Hugg at Loyola, Loyno .edu. We have some chats. Okay, the chats are not having to do with the substance; they're having to do with quality of the audio, and then one colleague had to deal with some family business. So, Bosco, I thank you. Do you have any comments or questions, sir, or Demetrios, or anyone? Bosco?
Well, it has been great to hear you. And nowadays we need more and more this kind of thing, because we are living in quite a wild situation. And I just think there is an elephant in the room, because you didn't talk about Palestine. And nowadays, with the situation there is there, it's also a problem. I know it was provoked by Hamas, and it was not. It has a reason for this attack of Israel, but nevertheless, the way the things are going, they are very close to these crimes against humanity. So it's another example. Ukraine is a wonderful example, Nagorno-Karabakh also, but perhaps you should also include Palestine.
My research assistants are, they want to, and they are endeavoring to work on this. And I think, would you say it's a Gordian knot? It's really complex. But I agree with you completely. We should all work on it, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people in the streets in the United States.
Yeah.
Right now. And I know we do too.
Yeah, but that does not diminish what you have done. That was great towards Nagorno-Karabakh and Ukraine. And this year, this week, I read in a newspaper an interview from a Turkish writer named Orhan Pamuk, that has been the winner of the Nobel Prize, and it tells about the situation of the Armenians. They are persecuted for every part where they go, or every part where they go. And it's interesting to see someone from Turkey being able to talk about the problems of the authorities of Turkey, and that's the right thing to do. And I was really impressed with his interview. There was in the international newspapers, and is a man of courage. And indeed, there is a problem nowadays we are living in. Ukraine, Nagorno-Karabakh, Palestine are really trouble places with different histories, different reasons, but it's a sad story that we are living there. And thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The final comment that is that, as you say, all this is going on. It's especially important in international law. What we let happen becomes part of the rubric of international law. What we forbid to happen becomes a part of international law. So there needs to be something more than just bystanders.
Yes.
There need to be participants negotiating all these things. Thank you all. Thank you, Bosco, for having me. Thank you, Dmitry.
May I add something?
Sure.
So, dear professor, also a heartfelt thank you from my part. It was a brilliant lecture as always. Also, kudos to your charming assistants who also did a great job. And you know how I always congratulate you on St. Patrick's Day. It's like a tradition, a bilateral tradition. And I've learned that there is also an Orthodox saint, Saint Patricius, whose name day is on May 19th, which also is the day on which Greeks remember the genocide of the Greeks in Asia Minor by the Turkish. So it fit very well that you, as Patricius, made this speech today. I just like to ask you. You know, we've been serving Elpis for so many years, and Elpis, of course, in Greek means hope. And sometimes when delivering lectures in international law, I honestly am standing there and thinking, okay, what else, you guys? What else should I tell you? I mean, you're watching the media. You can see yourselves about the strengths of international law. My mere question would be, since you are so experienced in the area of international law, are you optimistic for the upcoming years?
I'm German Irish, so I have to be optimistic. Dimitrios, I wanted to say, can it be worse? But it can be worse. I am as I mentioned in the introduction, I am so hopeful that some people will come forward with something revolutionary, dramatic, to relieve the pressures of these women. I worship, forgive me for that language, but, the people who reconstructed the legal international law after World War II with what they had did so much. And I think it's time to start restructuring some things. The colonial past in the Middle East, it's time to maybe rebuild, reconstruct. And so in that way, the future would have to have hope. Oscar?
Yes, I agree with you. And I would like to say that I'm Irish too. I'm with you, and I feel like an Irish,
Hey,
if you
thank
allow
you
me.
very much. I enjoyed it.